Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna go through the patch 7.21 notes and also the upcoming jungle changes that have been suggested, and I'm just gonna get right into it. Patch 7.21 is not a big patch. Highlights, who cares about this one? I don't care about patch highlights. I'm just gonna press it to see what it is. Okay. Azir, Q damage reduced at later ranks, with damage reduced at later levels. So the change is not that big. Not that big. It's reduced by 5 and 20 damage at max rank. Like Q, like the change that Azir needs is that his mana costs need to go up, because he's been too crazy. I think Azir is quite OP right now. It's really OP, and I think if they buff his or nerf his mana costs, then I think it's a step in the right direction. But of course, 20 damage is still a number not to like completely shy away from, right? It's still 20 damage, but in the end, this is not going to change how OP Azir is. So I think still, Azir is still OP. Ekko, passive Z drive resonance, damage to monsters 200%. Now this is an okay buff. Okay buff. His passive is a big part of his clear. And the fact that it can also be applied to multiple enemies. This is going to give Ekko jungle definitely a space. I think Ekko is a very mobile champion, and I'm assuming you would still have to build him AP in the jungle, because tank Ekko shouldn't be that great, and maybe we'll see some of this. I think most of the tank junglers are still better, but it's still like a neat nerf. I think we saw like Trick pull it out when after it was nerfed, and it seemed okay. I think Ekko jungle might see some play here, but I still feel like the top tier junglers are better. Let's see if that changes when we go further into the patch notes. Evelynn, E% health damage, minimum damage set. I guess this is just for small camps to actually die from me. Yeah, because Whiplash doesn't kill a mini Krug, we're still tracking of this performance post-update may need to make more substantial changes, but this one felt pretty simple. Or this doesn't matter, this is more a quality of life change more than anything. Okay, Galio. Now this is crazy. Now this is absolutely crazy. Like the ability power numbers that Galio has received from this patch is absolutely bonkers. So the passive, massive increase. Keep in mind the passive, if you use spells, it goes down. Like if you hit your spells, it goes down by 4 seconds each, right? So this is absolutely monstrous. This is a massive change. 0.3 ability power is crazy, and base damage hasn't been reduced. Base damage here has been reduced by 30, but it's a boost of ability power ratio of 0.15. And here we have early game change, a base damage change, or a nerf, as you may see, right? Before it was base 2% targets maximum health per half a second, so it was 6% health in the period of 1.5 seconds. So Winds of War lasts 1.5 seconds, and this is what matters when it comes to Galio, right? 1.5 seconds, and so this pretty much means, this is absolutely crazy, because this means for 100 AP you do 9% maximum health damage. So right here, if you have 300 AP, you do 27% maximum health damage, with a full Q. So this is like when your tornado is on the ground and people eat it, On top of that, the base damage of the ratio is still, what the hell? Okay. Well, the base ratio is still crazy. So on top of that, you get your percentage damage, and you also get like the base damage, which is also absolutely bonkers. And AP Galio is the shit right now. AP Galio, I'm expecting it to get hotfix, because this is absolutely crazy. This is AP Gragas levels, even worse, because this is crazy stuff. This right here as well scales with ability power now, so this is what's added. The reduced. What did they reduce? No, they just added the ability power scaling, and then physical damage reduction is half. Okay, so he's more of a anti-mage than anti-everything than he ever was. Okay, the main thing here is, the ability power scaling is there, and together with all these changes, you can also, I have to talk about Justice Punch as well. Justice Punch it has been reduced base damage by 40 on max rank, but the ability power ratio is up. So what you want to do on Galio right here is you want to max W second. You want to max W second to support this more AP heavy build, and you can just press it more often. Shield of the Rand also goes down in cooldown the more points you put it in, and 40% damage reduction early on in the game is absolutely crazy. If you have this at level 13 together with some ability power, this can get very ridiculous very fast. So I'm suspecting Galios to run Thunderlord. I expect them to buy like semi-tank, or maybe if the build, you know, is so powerful that you can just one-shot people and not care about, you know, having defensive stats, then we might see like full AP builds like we've seen in the past on Gragas. But nevertheless, I think these numbers are absolutely crazy. Galio as a champion, of course, falls off even if you run AP. Like at that point, you have to kind of hope that you can one-shot people, and the ultimate doesn't have that bad AP scaling either. So the AP scalings of Galio are through the roof. Abuse it while it's hot, you have to, because it's absolutely crazy how OP it is, and you know, it's absolutely crazy. You know, just abuse it, abuse it, abuse it, abuse it. You can buy this snow machine item, and you can buy Rod of Ages, you can buy, you know, whatever, you know, like it's crazy for sure. It's crazy, you know. This I tried it once, and you could just one-shot people, you know. You can just straight up one-shot people. I want to move on. Gangplank, Q gold on kill increased. So this is alright. This is okay. I don't think Gangplank has been too bad, you know. I think Gangplank has been okay, you know. He's been okay. He does fine into some tanks top lane, but you know, his big issue is that he can just get Doven, and when lane swaps were removed from the game, then Gangplank also went down in value. But I think as it stands right now, you know, Gangplank can impact that bot lane, and I think Gangplank as a champion is underrated. You know, sometimes I enjoy playing myself some Gangplank, and this type of change is not going to be too big of a deal. You know, it's not going to be too big of a change. The amount of money you'll get out of this might be like I don't know. In the end, you might get, I don't know, like 200 gold out of this, 200, 150, maybe less. Like the main thing here is that you can get your ultimate upgraded a bit earlier, and sure, it's a small buff. Rammus. W armor bonus increased at later ranks, W flat magic resist and percentage decreased. Rammus was shaping up to be a tank of all trades, so we're resharpening his identity to be more oriented against teams that rely heavily on physical damage. Oh, this is crazy. This is crazy how much of a difference is this. Magic resist bonus. Okay. Well, I think it's, if this is the way they want to go with Rammus, that he counters AD and is weaker against AP, then sure. But why does he get any magic resist bonus at all then? Because this is like he's still not gonna die to any AP carries, right? If this is the direction they want to go in, because this magic resist bonus and the flat MR still matters in the end. But all in all, sure, it gives him more of the identity that they're intending. I think Rammus has a place in solo queue. I see it a lot, especially since people play like Yasuo and whatever the hell. But I still think there's a lot of junglers that are better than Rammus. And I think ever since his Q got changed, that it can get cancelled by CC, I think it's also is a bit weaker. And I think he has a hard time, I don't know, getting into the right targets or dealing with long-range AD carries. So I think Rammus is not that great, but I've seen him a couple of times in solo queue, and I think in solo queue it has success. Sejuani. So Sejuani at Worlds has been kind of a, you know, it has been picked quite early most of the time. You saw Samsung winning 3-0 with it. Sejuani is definitely a powerful champion. Let's look at the changes. Base armor down by 5, growth down by 1. So it's in total, let's say Sejuani is level 18. We got 18 plus 5, we got 23 armor. Base magic resistance also down. Well, this is some big ass nerfs right here. This is some big ass nerfs, because these numbers were very high before, and this is a lot of gold value dropped from Sejuani. Flat bonus resistances dropped to 20, 70, 120, 2 seconds at all ranks. 12 seconds at all ranks. So early game the passive is buffed, later on in the game it's nerfed. And of course, you know, with how the jungle meta has been shaping up, then, you know, in all honesty, Sejuani's early game was never an issue. Her clear on killing like the camps that have a lot of HP, like Braum and buffs, like red and blue, is still pretty OP. I think with the freeze damage change, this shouldn't be that big of a deal. But in the end, you know, it's still some big nerfs here. I feel like they are very similar to the nerfs that Gragas has received, and Gragas is still being played and such, and I think Sejuani will still see play after these changes, because she still has the strength of her passive, right? And on top of that, with the strength of her passive, like losing 1 second matters for sure. Maybe her build will change a bit, because we saw a bunch of like Warmogs armor being bought and rushing straight HP because of her base resistance being so high. So maybe we see like an alteration in the build. But all in all, like her passive and the fact that she can apply stun to multiple people, and the fact that her ultimate is a great engage tool is still there. And as long as that is relevant, and all these junglers that can actually punish these things, and the jungle is in the current state that it is, I don't think it's going to matter too much. So I think it's a good change. It will be less OP, but I still think Sejuani is going to be played. Udyr, attack damage growth stat. Now this is a big change. This is a big change. Big change. This is 1.8 per level. It's a lot. You know, it adds up and it becomes a lot. You know, getting 5 AD per level is pretty big. I think this is what Darius has. I'm not too sure. Tiger strike damage. Like, I guess with this change you would have to go Tiger to be useful. But the main problem still stands for Udyr, that in a lot of cases he just gets kited. Like, sure, you can get like righteous glory and shit, but there's just too many junglers with too powerful ultimates that just make more sense than Udyr. And if you want a champion that is better in early with the lack of an ultimate, then you just play Elise, you know. And I just feel like Udyr right now is such a hard champ to balance, because, you know, either when he was good, he was like really OP, because he could like stack Tiger Stance twice and just one-shot people in top lane. And this was, I don't know, maybe in season 2 or season 3. And then there was like the time where Phoenix Stance was really OP, and you could just clear the entire jungle in like 250 or something. But I don't know. I still feel like the quality of Udyr as a champion, his kit is just too weak, you know. And it doesn't feel rewarding at all to play Udyr unless you're like super fed and you can just buy all these really expensive items that makes Udyr like a menace that just chases after you. But even then, like, he kind of falls off in those games as well. So I don't know. I feel like the buff is pretty big though, and if anything, you know, you should just try playing Tiger Stance, maxing Q, and try to punch people for a lot of damage. Urgot, passive damage decreases early ranks, but cooldown decreases later ranks. Q detonates more quickly. So this is pretty big. I think this is pretty big. Like, a big problem for Urgot was that he just fucking falls off if he builds all these items. Like, a big issue for Urgot right now is his itemization. Like, you can't, you wanna go for the classic build where you get Black Cleaver and Titanic Hydra, and then you just get Gargoyle Stoneplate. But since Urgot is a ranged champion, he's not allowed to buy Titanic Hydra, and on top of that, now Sterk's Gauge is also melee only. So all of these items that would be like perfect for Urgot are no longer available, and you're forced to get like Black Cleaver and Frozen Mallet, and it's suboptimal. And a big problem for Urgot was that he fell off. And the main thing here is, with the change to his legs, you know, right here, his cooldown of his legs has changed massively here. You know, the base damage early on has been changed, so his early game is weaker for sure. His early game is weaker because the Q mana cost has been going up, and Urgot's early game was always decent. His early game was always decent, but then he fell off like a dog. Like, he just fell off because his itemization was shit. And this was the biggest issue for Urgot. Like, you had that Black Cleaver and the Frozen Mallet and you just did nothing. This was the biggest issue for Urgot. So they've shifted his power from early game to late game, and I'm just worried a bit that they nerfed him a bit too hard in the early game to justify this change in the late game. So right now, you know, in the past it was like he had a good early game, and then he did fine into a lot of the matchups up top. He could do well into the tanks, he could do well into the bruises as well, and he was just all around quite fine. I think Gnar was one of the champions he maybe struggled with, or I'm not too certain on the matchups for Urgot. We saw Urgot at the Worlds doing fine in the early game, and then it actually also won a game, I think, against... did it win a game? I think it won a game. Nevertheless, you know, the cooldown change matters, but this is a nerf for Urgot's early game. The lack of Sterak is also a big nerf that was in the previous patch. And all in all, you know, right here with Urgot is just a trade-off, and I don't know if I would be happy about it. You know, the time before detonation on Q also matters, because the Q was kind of a weird spell to land, and this is going to make it a lot easier. But the main question is if this is impacting his early game enough, you know, because the ratio of how many times you hit Q should also go up, so the mana cost, you know, maybe it balances out. You know, for that Q that you missed, you're gonna hit one more. You're gonna have like slightly weaker pushing power, because you're not gonna be allowed to just use Q on the wave as you want to. But all in all, later on is going to be better. I think the main problem still for Urgot is itemization. Black Cleaver is fancy, and then Frozen Mallet, and with this change, you know, right here, 2.5 seconds later on your legs, this is going to be quite big. This is the main focus here, that he's going to be able to do like 8% target maximum health every 2.5 seconds, in theory, if he's hitting something in front of him, and even more so if he manages to maneuver himself around and shoot off more legs. So this is a big buff here, this one. But his early game is weaker, so we will have to see how he does in the matchup. Still, I think overall it's a big buff. So I think Urgot players rejoice. The main issue still stands, like what the hell do you buy on Urgot? And I think that is the most awkward part for Urgot. You know, you go Black Cleaver and some Frozen Mallet and some tank items, and you know, with this change, maybe you are more allowed to build like more tank and still actually be useful with your DPS. Okay, let's move on. Xin Zhao. I love Xin Zhao. The new Xin Zhao is freaking fun. I think new Xin Zhao is really powerful. Ardent Censer. Attack speed and non-hit damage reduced. Alright. So, Ardent Censer got kind of nuked off the map. Okay. What do you buy first now? all items for supports, they scale off of each other. Redemption is better if you have something else. Ardent Censer is going to be better later on. Like this nerf is pretty big for Ardent Censer. People are no longer going to be Ardent Censer bots, and I think all the melee supports are going to come back now. Rakan is going to be fantastic. Braum, Alistar, all these supports that were really OP before anyone started playing Ardent Censer supports. But then Ardent Censer came into the picture and they just kind of disappeared without any nerfs. But Alistar, Braum, and all the melee supports should come back into the picture now. They have better items to build. They can just go Knights Vow, they can just get Solari. We might see Thresh again, and we might see all these fun champions again. And Janna has received the big nerfs too, and the champions that can actually deal with Lulu are gonna come back. So I think this is a good change, you know, but a good change for now, because Ardent Censer has been too relevant for too long. So I think all the melee supports will come back, and we will have kind of a stale meta again. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. I think Janna might still have a place because she does well into some of these melee champions, and Lulu as well, and we'll just have to see. I think it's no longer lock-in Janna for free win. Soraka might be played more though. I think Soraka has been kind of underrated. But I think the main question here is, what do you buy first? And I think buying Redemption first is probably better than this shit, you know, because, you know, the thing with Redemption is that, sure, the moment you buy it, it's not as effective as it used to be, but the moment you buy, like, the small component that increases your shielding and healing by 10%, the moment you do that, all of a sudden it's like the good old Redemption. So it's not like a large gap to overcome. So I think Redemption first is going to be better than Ardent Censer first. Okay, Frozen Heart. Frozen Heart was a really forgotten item because Thornmail got massive buffs, and, you know, Random's Omen is important when the enemy team has a heavy crit AD or whatever you want to call it. I think, you know, 10 arm buff is relevant. Like Iceborne Gauntlet was also quite nerfed, and usually champions that would want to buy Frozen Heart and Iceborne Gauntlet, you know, like Iceborne Gauntlet was just the better choice every time, because it actually helped a lot of your lane matchups, and like the main person that would buy this is probably Poppy. Poppy is a champion that uses this the most, and Iceborne Gauntlet also got some nerfs, right? So, you know, as long as that stands, like it's hard to argue buying Frozen Heart over Iceborne Gauntlet. Like, let's say you're playing Malphite or Poppy and you're playing against an AD champion, you would much rather buy this or Sunfire Cape. So as long as that's the case, I don't know, man. It's just Frozen Heart has a lot of mana, and mana is such a wasted stat, and it's not that useful, you know, especially if you decide to buy Frozen Heart later as an armor item. Like, the other armor items are still just so much better, because they both give health. Health is just a better stat than mana, and that's it. You know, for Frozen Heart, this is Rise item. Like, if Rise needs heavy armor and it's against full AD team, then he buys this. The other god's stacking effect can now occur 3 times every 12 seconds. So in theory, like, if you use it the same amount as before, like if you rotated it properly before, then you sack at the same pace. But this will be like if you use 3 spells and then you walk away and you are busy with something, maybe you base, then you walk back and you use 3 stacks or whatever, then of course this is a buff, so to speak. Like, it requires less upkeep than before. So this required you to use 2 spells every 8 seconds, and this thing requires you to use 3 spells every 12 seconds. So mathematically it's the same if you rotate it all the time, but the window to use 3 spells in 12 seconds is just easier to fill. So I would say it's a small buff, not a buff that I would really care about. More pew pew. You know, Ezreal has received a lot of small buffs all the time, and I think there might be a day and age where we see Ezreal coming back in all his glory. But as it stands right now, I don't think this is something that matters. Okay, Doombots of Doom, don't care. Death One skins, don't care. Man don't care, man's not hot. Legacy bundles. Death One set is also available. You can also buy these skins and chromas individually. Okay. Alright, I'm confused. Releasing 3 new skins and in just 1 month they become legacy skins. It's Halloween, bro. Holiday and event skins typically are legacy and only available during... Okay. Alright, let's move on to the next portion. Catch-up experience and jungle changes in 7.22. Catch-up experience is only granted on large or epic monsters. The amount per large monster kill is up, but the overall generated catch-up experience is going to be down substantially. Equally as important as a clear path for an opponent to keep the enemy down further, don't give them access to large monsters. I like this. Finally, you know, this is a good change, a healthy change, and definitely a step in the right direction. I think something that we need to be scared about is that with the upcoming runes reforged, then a lot of these carnivore junglers, like, that want to get in your face and eat you alive, they might be too powerful. So I feel like this, with hand in hand with what's about to come, might put Elise and Lee Sin and all these junglers that, like Kha'Zix and Olaf, like these, it will put them back on the map really heavily. You know, this movement speed from this hunter runes reforged thing. I think this one that enchants your boots, like this is going to be bonkers. Like the thunderlord, you know, the electrocute, the damage numbers on that is, it's too high. It's way too high. Like it's double of old thunderlord. And some of the runes reforged is going to be absolutely crazy for junglers. It's going to be super crazy for these junglers that want to eat these other tank junglers alive. And these tank junglers, they won't have colossus anymore. So I think together with runes reforged, you need to be kind of careful here, because I think, you know, some of these junglers are gonna be too big. You know, Elise is gonna be too heavy. But nevertheless, you know, we need changes in the jungle, because jungle is boring, and the off season is for changes. But as we stand right now, I think, you know, with runes reforged is going to be like good luck in esports. All the other junglers is going to be Elite City, Kazakh City, and whatever people might think of, you know, maybe like Warwick, or who cares. Nevertheless, Wolf Camp at level 1 will grant a full level. This was a casualty of there being too much experience in jungle at the start of season 2017. We're hoping some routes are opened up, as wolves are more relevant and razorbeaks are less so. Alright, this is going to open up a lot of pathings. We might see some wolf camp into some cheese. I think the wolf camp, it matters that the wolf camp can be leashed by your bot lane, and then maybe you can do like wolf camp into enemy red buff or something like this, you know, or whatever, you know. I think it's juicy that wolf camp grants a full level. Rolling back to the bonus teamwork catch-up experience we introduced in 7.4. In 7.4 we introduced some measures so that players that were substantially lower level than the team would get a boost in experience. Upon reflection, this acted more as a snowball mechanic than it served its original intent to provide a safety net for experience-starved roles. Are we removing it? Okay, so this is a nerf to supports, right? And also the junglers that like to get in there and get dirty a bit too much. Because to be honest, this was something that I didn't think about when it came to the jungle. But usually junglers are not that far behind that they actually make use of this. Usually this is about supports. This is about supports using a lot of time, roaming, and not spending a lot of time and getting experience. And this is usually the most impactful when you're ahead. And I think, as they're stating here, it's not really a safety net. It's just more of a snowball thing. Because imagine a situation where you are behind. When you're behind, you need to sit on the turrets and you need to defend towers. You're not going to make any aggressive plays. Like, let's say you're playing support and AD bottom. You need to most likely be bottom more than the enemy support, because you're going to get pushed into your turret and you need to prevent dives, while the enemy support is going to be able to roam around and get punished less for it. So what they're saying here is 100% true, and I think it did serve as a snowball tool more than anything. Poacher's Dirk buffs. The Poacher's Dirk no longer has a cooldown between enemy camps stolen, allowing for quicker stacking. For most of the league's history, counter jungling's main purpose has been to set the enemy jungler way behind. This is one exploration into a world where counter jungling gets a successful jungler ahead in a meaningful way. This is pretty cool, because Poacher's Dirk, you know, Poacher Dirk did manage to, like, it did receive massive buffs in the way that it gives you the movement speed. Basically give you the Moby Boots speed as before. I can pull it up on the screen here. Poacher's Dirk. Here's the League of Legends wiki. So after killing an enemy, right, never mind. I confused it with something else. I think I confused it with Human's Ghostblade. After killing any enemy, your next damaging spell will deal 40 bonus damage to all enemies it hits. So this was, like, when it first came out and I saw this, I was like, damn, son, this is where you find this. You know, this is juicy. And you know, this was definitely like a thing that was legit, you know, and the price of it is really cheap. You know, this effect, I don't know how much you would weigh it into cost-wise, but it's for 250 gold is not too bad, right? So effectiveness-wise, this is not a terrible item. You know, would you value 40 damage, bonus physical damage to all enemies it hits? You know, would you value that at 250 gold? I think it's fair to do, and I think early game is going to matter more, and a lot of these junglers that, like, if you're in a situation where you're jungling against a way weaker jungler, then Poacher's Dirk is going to be the obvious choice where you can snowball even harder. So I think this is definitely important. I think this is great, and it's definitely an item that you have to pay attention to, because Poacher's Dirk did receive some buffs in the past, and I think it's it can be good. It can be good for sure. But we need to remember the time. You know, it's like the main thing here is the gold cost. It costs 600. If you compare it, you know, like the way people view it is, if you buy this and the enemy person buys other items, are you going to be much weaker than him? And in theory, at 600 gold, you're going to be, nothing can be bought by 250, right? You can buy potions. But let's say, for the sake of it, let's say you Poacher's Dirk and 2 potions against double longsword. Then double longsword is going to win, right? If the jungle matchups are that even. And then, like, in a case where mid laners are equally strong and you are equally strong, then I think Poacher's Dirk is going to be a bad thing to buy. But let's say you have Talia mid, and all of a sudden you have like this pushing power, or I don't know what champion you can think of that is going to have a lot of pushing. But let's say you have Galio mid. That's the easiest example. You have Galio mid, and he pushes, and he can Galio ult you, and you can do heavy invades. Then it kind of compensates for the lack of a longsword, you know. And there might be scenarios where the enemy team, enemy jungle might not even be able to buy double longsword, because in the end Poacher's Dirk is cost 600, and if you're completely even and 600 is what you walk out of base with, then you're gonna win with Poacher's Dirk, right? But in the end, you know, for comparison's sake, we're gonna say Poacher's Dirk, 2 potions against double longsword. You know, it's not a big deal. You know, I'm saying 2 potions, which I don't even know if it makes sense, because let's just call it pink ward instead, because you're gonna have refillable potion anyway if you jungle, so you can't really buy potions. So all in all, you know, if you are even, then maybe that extra longsword is going to make that difference, and that could be like a safer approach. But if the enemy jungler is playing Ivern, then, you know, go for Poacher's Dirk for sure. Jungle camps are all worth the same creep score. Okay, so this is a big deal. Like, there was a lot of discussion about this on Twitter with some people, and I just wanted to make a comment on this without trying to put it into 140 characters. So to say that it doesn't matter is silly. Jungle camps are all worth the same creep score. The reasoning here from Riot Games is that, you know, if you press tab, you shouldn't feel too bad if the enemy guy just killed 15 golem camps and you killed 15 grumps. So you shouldn't feel too bad when you press tab and he has like, you know, 6 times your CS. So that's the main thing. That's the main reasoning. That's like, it should feel nicer when you've been killing those grumps, and there are some junglers that prefer to kill raptors and prefer to kill golems. It should feel nicer for you to have like an equal CS number. So the main thing here is, you know, when it comes to this, is like the main discussion, the drive in the discussion has been that, oh, when I press tab, I don't know exactly what jungle camps the guy has been taking anymore. So sure, you know, there was this thing that made it very easy for players to just press tab and count, oh, that's 6 raptors, he did golems as well, his number is high, I know exactly his jungle path now, exactly. Sure, it made it very easy to just press tab, and the moment he showed, look at his CS number, does he have 3? Okay, he did grump, red, blue, if he's level 3, right? All these things, right? I can give you millions of examples. So, sure, it made it very easy for you in solo queue to know exactly what the jungle pathing is. So, the main thing here is for me is to kind of think about what kind of an impact it actually has. So, one thing that some people said was you can just level 1 invade, and then you know where the enemy starts, and then you know his pathing, no problem. So, sure, this is true. Like, if you invade level 1 and you place wards and you know where the enemy starts, you're going to know. Alright. In a lot of cases, you're just not able to invade. Like, let's say you're playing against Talia Jace and they're the ones invading you and trying to fight you in your own jungle. I need to sneeze. Bless my face. So what I was talking about was, in some cases you just can't invade. You just can't invade, and you can't do it because the enemy team is stronger. Sure, you can take a risk and maybe go for a different path and maybe hope that they're not there, but there's always a risk with that, you know. Maybe it's not too big of a risk if you look at patterns of how teams play or how people play, or in solo queue usually people just stand at their turret and wait, you know, and they don't stack up. But sure, you know, there's always going to come a risk. Like, let's say in theory that the enemy team makes the correct play, you're always going to take a risk if you're weak at level 1, right? So getting level 1 information is not something that is always possible. The other thing is where people leash. So sure, if you get leashed on a buff, or a mid laner leashes raptors, you know, some mid laners are strong enough to check raptors. They're strong enough to go check raptors, and let's say you're Talia level 1 or Galio level 1, you're strong enough to check enemy raptors, and most champions can punish you. But in some cases, let's say the enemy team has the Talia, then you could actually get punished for checking raptors, right? So there are some scenarios where mid laners can't check level 1 the enemy raptors. You know, there's some cases where they can't just invade and check enemy raptors without getting completely chunked out. There are cases where supports and ADs also stand in the bush and wait around the raptor and just wait in anticipation for the mid lane to check the raptors. So this is not something that you can do 100% of the time. This is something you can do once and then you can get punished for it. I think this is something, if you want to look at an example, is look at Vitality's series against G2 last split. And first game, Nuktak did this and got information. I think he even stole a couple of raptors. Second game, he did this, he got punished, he burned his flash, and I think he also died as Ryze. And then he, it might have been against H2K even. I think it might have been against H2K. I'm not too sure anymore. But the point is, you know, it can be punished. So this is not something that is true 100% of the time, right? You know where enemy jungler starts 100%. And then there's fake leashing, right? Fake leashing hasn't been happening too much at Worlds because I think laners just think it's just too big of a sacrifice, especially for bottom. You can also lose push topside, and some matchups that you might be able to push early, you won't be able to push if you fake leash, you know? So in a lot of cases, fake leashing was just something that just didn't happen at Worlds. So that is one way to get information as well, right? Through leashes. But the main thing here is that, you know, if you are strong enough, if let's say you're even in the game, then usually you can get information on where the jungle, what kind of a jungle clear the enemy jungler did by just, after 3 camps, you level 3, you just walk through mid lane and just place a ward on raptors. If the raptors are up, you're going to know what kind of a clear he did. If the raptors are not up, then you're also going to know what kind of clear he did if you do this at like a 3-minute mark, right? So there are still ways to get information without knowing the CS number, right? In a lot of cases, most junglers do this play where they do 3 camp into a crab, into placing a ward somewhere deeper into the enemy jungle without taking much risk, right? Like Gragas not going to take much risk, he can just E away. If he spots the enemy jungler while he's doing that, then he has the information that he wants anyway, right? So this is also out of the way now, like being able to get information without looking at tab and looking at CS number. The next thing that I want to bring up is, you know, the case where it actually might matter. Let's say you are pushing all lanes, you know, your team is very strong early game, and all of a sudden, as a jungler, you're doing like this wonky pathing, like this unorthodox pathing, and you're doing it into a gank. All of a sudden, the decision, like let's say you're ganking top, all of a sudden the decision from the enemy jungler is going to be more difficult to do because you can't just press tab and know what camps you did. Did he do raptors? Did he not do raptors? Did he do whatever, you know? So in a case where you can't get information through invasion because you're getting pushed in on every lane, if you can't get information through level 1, or if you can't get information through doing this invade that I talked about after 3 camp crab or whatever, into putting ward on raptor, if you can't do this, then it's going to matter, right? Because punishing the gank that is going to come into top side is going to be harder to do because you don't know exactly what camps he took. Now, of course, there are some cases where, or almost in every case, if you know the timing, so let's say this is not going to be precise, but let's say a Jarvan ganks at 3:30. Most of the time, you know, without pressing tab, you can know, oh, at this time he could have just done these 3 camps into level 3, right? So this is important to highlight. And sometimes, you know, through this, and you know, you always had to, like, what you will have to do now is you'll have to make an assumption. Like, let's say 3:30, he could have done the gank at 3 minutes. Let's say Elise could have done the gank at 2:50 top side, and let's say he did it at 3:30. And usually you can fill in the gap of what he did for 30 seconds by just pressing tab and thinking, oh, he did grab, maybe he did gromp, and now you know, right? So what people are going to lose off of this is precision, you know, precision. But what is going to be more required from junglers is knowing the timings of junglers and the possibilities of junglers, and then make an educated guess. And sometimes I think what this is going to do is sometimes junglers is going to just take like the wrong intuitive decision more frequently. But I think this is really interesting for me because I think you know, this is my subjective opinion now. I talked about the possibilities where it might matter, and I think it's going to matter the most where you're looking to punish the early game junglers that are trying to gank heavily and you're just trying to take away their camps when they're on the other side of the map. And this is going to be harder to do. And of course, being stronger early game is just going to matter more. But in the end, you know, there are still other ways to get information, and I think in a scenario where you are so much weaker early game, as I presented, you know, you're weaker, you're getting pushed in every lane, then I don't think you should be able to cheese the enemy jungler anyway by taking away some of his jungle camps. I think it should be like a completely closed off section, and in theory, you know, if you're getting pushed in and the enemy team just wards defensively, then most likely you're not going to invade anyway. So even in that case, is not that big of a deal. I think a lot of it will come down to intuition and skill, and jungling and keeping up with the enemy jungler is going to be harder for sure, but it's still possible and it's still a skill. And I think counting the enemy jungle camps was never a hard thing to do. It was not impressive if you could count to 6 and know the enemy guided raptors, you know. It's really not that impressive if you see a guy level 3 and you can just do some basic counting. It really isn't a skill. It's really freaking easy. And sure, what it does, you know, the big difference here, this is not the same change as like when people drop Baron timers. Like all of a sudden Baron timers and buff timers were in the game, you could just press tab and see it. This is a big difference in terms of this change, because this change actually makes the game harder. This is a change that removes one of the statistics and it makes it harder to track the enemy jungler. And I think that's positive. But I think most high-level junglers know by timings what they can and cannot do and what they do. So I think, you know, a big example was, for example, Maxlord did this thing where he showed his decision-making when it came to ganking top and ganking Jace, and his decision making had nothing to do with pressing tab and knowing what the enemy jungler, what camps the enemy jungler took, right? It was all about knowing the timings and understanding that enemy Sejuani can't be level 3 because she did crab, gromp, and blue. Unless she has some stupid XP quint, she's not going to be level 3. And she has to do one more camp, and he has his timing to do so. So this was all about understanding timings, and I think jungle as a role is going to be more difficult and more impactful. But in the end, I think this is not the major changer. I think this is going to just give less precision, and it's going to come down more to intuition and just knowledge. And all in all, I think it's a positive change. Something we need to look out for is, you know, the disappearance of tank junglers completely with the upcoming changes in the next patch. or runes reforged dropping, and all of these changes potentially hitting. So this is PBE. Keep in mind, this is PBE. This is not something that's coming 100%, but I still wanted to comment on it and the impact of the jungle camps having all the same score. I think that settles it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys. Peace.